what's going on? And he goes, bear. I said, bear? He goes, bear everywhere. You ever seen a bear hopped up on gasoline? Second only to shooting a bear that's hopped up on gasoline. Boom! And boom! Here we are laying in the bottom of this cabin, and these guns are going off. We have no idea what's going on, you know. And the moose is running through the woods, dragging this rope and dragging a boat because he's already knocked the other two guys out. I'm being hunted, in essence, by this wild boar because bears are like ghosts. Something had moved the cabin, and I thought, this is not good. It's like, how can I hunt something that in essence hunts me?
All right, now I see your bear skin that you got up here.
Yeah.
Growing up, you had, I don't even know how many bear rugs, how many bear mounts coming out of the wall like this. It was pretty fantastic. I know that the bear video was pretty popular, and if you've got any other bear stuff you want to share, I'm sure that they'd love to hear it.
Oh, I got a lot of bear stories, different places we went. One of the places we decided to try bear hunting, we always did the Canada thing. We tried that. We went to that probably for 20 years. We would go back and forth every year, hunting all different kinds of bears. But we heard about a great adventure they had in a place called New Brunswick. And it's kind of close to the Newfoundland thing where we used to go the caribou and moose hunting. But they would allow you 2 bears in New Brunswick. They hated bears in New Brunswick. Bears were nuisances in New Brunswick. And so forth, they offered a larger number, etc., and they tried to get you to do that. But because of that, the bears were larger there. They had a good food source, a lot of trout and salmon coming off the ocean. So they were larger bears. I guess in some ways, these bears were also phased bears. So you had a bear that was not only black, but you had bears that were called the cinnamon phase, you know, the fall phase they would call it. And I always had my eye on, you know, thinking to myself, man, if I ever shoot another bear, I could always shoot black bears, but I thought I'd sure love to try one of these cinnamon bears because they kind of look like a grizzly in a way, you know. And like I thought that'd be a great
like
thing.
Like a blonde, brownish.
Exactly. And so what I would do is we went there in order to try to find a way to find some, you know, great bear that would be a good one to use and everything. Well, it had a guide. And the guide there was the head of the he was the head of the hunting association, bear hunting association for New Brunswick. So he was a really neat dude. He was a really interesting guy. He was a spiritual guy, and he found out that I was a pastor, and so he said to me, he goes, before we go bear hunt, I want you to go preach at the church. And I'm like, what? He goes, why don't you go preach at the church? And I said, okay, great, no problem. I said, I'm here to go bear hunt, but I preach at church. I said, when is it, on Sunday morning? He goes, no, it's on Sunday night because nobody can get there in the daylight. He said in the day. So he said, we all have to do services late in the afternoon, kind of in the evening. He said, and everybody can get there. But I just, as an aside, I remember that I went there to do their service, and I got up and I preached a sermon, you know, whatever, got it done, and I stood there afterwards, and I shook hands with people as they left. And the first hand I shook hold of, and all of a sudden I looked at my hand, there's like a $10 bill. And I thought, what the heck? So I shook the hand of the next person, whatever, it's like a $20 bill in my hand. I thought, what? I looked at him, I said, what's this? He goes, that's the way they pay you. I said, what? He said, they just put money in their hand, they shake your hand, and then you get paid and everything else. And I thought, this is a crazy place. This is a crazy place.
That's nuts.
Anyway, I mean, it's just fun.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he decided to take us out and do the bear hunting. And he said, we got a couple of different ways to take you out. But first of all, I said to him, I said, can you teach me a little bit about the bears here? I mean, I know about bears in Canada and that kind of thing, but I'd like to know a little about bears out here. He said, in here, what we do is we look for the size of the bear, and we specifically look for the size of the bear by the claws marks on the tree. And I remember we would go out and we'd look into this kind of wilderness area and see the area, and he'd show me these claw marks. Now, most people would look out and they wouldn't pay any attention to them, but if you look at the trees, there'd be trees that would be stripped. And when they would be stripped, you'd see them at a particular height, you know, like maybe a 6 foot, 7 foot height of the stripping. But then you'd go some places and you'd see these like 8 foot, I mean, higher than I can reach. And all of a sudden there'd be these just stripes down the side of it. And I'd think, what in the world? He goes, this is a big boar. He said, that's what they would call the big bears, you know, the big boars. He said, this is where we want to hunt, right here, you know. And I'd think, well, are you kidding me? He goes, no, man. He said, this is where they are. So he put different things out. And one of the things that he put out, were 50-gallon drums. Now, I'm talking about a steel 50-gallon drum, and he would take the top off, and then he would fill it full of like old fish and that kind of stuff, smellier the better. I mean, it was rotten, rank, and everything else. And then he would weld the top of the lid back on again. And he just set that out by this tree, And he said, "This is what you're going to have to wait and see the bear come along." He said that they're going to look for this whole thing. He said, "Be real careful." He said, "And if you shoot one, don't go after it, And I thought,
don't try to put it in your van.
Yeah, you've heard that story. Well, anyway, I thought to myself, I can handle this because what's a bear going to do with this whole thing? And I tell you, I then began to understand the strength of a bear. And I'll tell you how it happened. We're out hunting one night, and I was just waiting there, And this guy did not put you into a tree in a stand or anything else. He just put you down near some logs, and that was your area, and then you would look and see if a bear came through, and then you'd make the thing. But the bear, I remember, the bear came in, and I mean, it was one of these phased bears, had this kind of brownness to it, and I thought, oh, it looks like a big brown bear, like on Kodiak Island or something. And I thought, this is the bear that I want. And that bear walked over, and he grabbed a hold of that 50-gallon drum, and he punched it over. And then he took his paws, and he just went like this, bash, and he just like you and I would open up a potato chip bag. I mean, he just bashed and ripped it open. And I thought to myself, this may not be good. I think I'm understanding what he's talking about. Because they often say that bears are so strong, they would be dangerous if they knew how powerful they were. I mean, it's unbelievable because most people don't get to see that kind of power displayed for a bear.
Right.
You see a bear catch a fish or that kind of thing. But to see the immensity of a bear that's able to just go pop and rip it open is the thing.
On something that you understand how strong it is.
Absolutely,
Right.
And I think to myself, okay, I'm number one, this is a strong animal. I understand that whole thing. And he got in there and he was moving it through, and I was just fascinated because I thought to myself, I don't know if I want to shoot him. I don't know if I want to give away my position. That was really what I was thinking. And I thought, I really want to be cool about this, but I want to see what he's doing. I was fascinated by how he handled it.
Yeah.
What really got me was when he stood up on his back legs, so stood up, and he grabbed a hold of that 50-gallon drum, picked it up, and he just waddled it back into the woods. I mean, it's not surreal. I've seen bears, run through the woods on the side of the mountains and everything else, but I'd never seen a bear actually pick up a 50-gallon drum full that he'd ripped open but hadn't quite gotten it finished and just started walking it back again.
It's like a person.
I thought to myself, I understand. And I understand why that 8-foot scratch is on that tree. And I think to myself, I don't know if this is real. I think I may be outmatched by what I've got at this particular point. And I have to tell you that because when I went back and I told him about what had gone on, he goes, oh yeah, he said, sometimes we chain the barrels to the tree because they have a tendency to take the barrels into the woods, and can't find them. So he said we chain them to the tree. It holds them there, and I thought, holy smoke, whatever. Well, we were out one day to a trout lake.
So you never shot that one?
Never shot that
You just
one.
watched it.
I just wanted to make sure, what I do, because I thought to myself, I may be outgunned. I mean, my classic gun I was using then, I thought, I don't know if it's powerful enough to handle this whole thing.
Yeah.
So he took us out to this lake one time. That was called the Lost Lake, it was called. There was a little trout in it. And he took us out to fish, and I remember it was an old log cabin there, I thought it was pretty cool. You'd open it up and look at it, there's old stuff on the wall, that kind of stuff. But it was nothing, nobody lives there or anything else. But we got out there, and the lake was like this little puddle in the middle, and the rest of it was like weeds all the way around it. And I thought, huh. And I had a fishing rod, and I said, how am I supposed to fish? He goes, you have to fish out there in the center. I said, yeah, but it's like 10 feet from the shore to where that little circle is. And I don't know how in the world how do I get it through the weeds so I don't draw it back in and take it? He said, you go out there. I said, well, how do I go out there? He said, take a board, take 2. And there were these boards there, like 1x6s or 1x8s. And we took him out, and we walked out, and he said, what do I do with these things? You lay a board down, you step on it, and then you put another board in front, and you keep going. And then when you get out to where you're going to be, he said, before you sink down, you put them like an X cross, and you stand on those, and that's how you cast. So here we are out there, standing on these boards. I swear, I was thinking to myself, I should have asked him how deep this lake is before I stand on this board.
Yeah.
But I was standing there. But anyway, make a long story short, he took me back to the cabin. He said, I want to show you something. He said, we were talking about how powerful bears are. He said, look around the corner of this cabin. And the cabin was a log cabin, how the logs are all stacked like this. And at one point, the cabin, something had moved the cabin off the top two boards, and the rest of the logs that were there, you built log cabins, you know, and it was twisted off. It was county wampus to it.
Okay.
And I said, what in the world's that? He goes, a bear tried to get into this. And he said what he did was, rather than go to the door or knock the door down, he just picked up a corner of the log cabin, lifted it up, and moved it over and set it down. I said, you got to be kidding me. He goes, no. By this point, I'm thinking to myself, now, I've hunted black bear, a lot of black bear in Canada, but this is going to be a whole new story, you know, about where these bear are. And I'm telling you, that was an unbelievable thing. I mean, to see the power of these animals and how big they were, you know, they were really unbelievable.
So it nudged the cabin.
It just nudged the cabin. And so I was like, this is craziest thing. So one day he said to me, he goes, you know what? He said, we're going to try another place. He said, because I don't see him coming in. He took me to a place, and what it was a cow that had given birth to a calf, and it died. And so he'd taken that entire animal, placed it there, put a log chain around it, and had it tied to a tree. And that's where he said, we're going to try it here and see if these bears will come in. So I was sitting there, and I was on the ground. I kept thinking to myself, I wonder if I could talk him into building a stand where I could be up off the ground, because I really don't feel comfortable being here on the ground, etc. So I was sitting there, and I thought, okay, let's see what happens. And then all of a sudden, and this is where I learned this part, I kept hearing noise around me. Well, you know, you're out in the woods, you're sensitive. When you're bear hunting, you're very sensitive. Any noise you hear. Because bears are like ghosts. It's unbelievable how a bear can come in and make no sound. Make no sound. They have these pads on the bottom of their feet that are large. And so they walk on the pads, not on their nails, not on their feet, not like we would normally with a sole foot. They walk on these pads, and therefore they make no sound. And they have a tendency, for some strange reason, not to even snap a twig, because the way they can lift their legs and put their weight down. So this thing comes in, and he's circling me. I have no idea about this. Because I said to the guide afterwards, I said, you know, I kept hearing these sounds. He goes, oh yeah. He goes, the bears here at least, I don't know what they're like when you're in Ontario or whatever, you know, that area. But he said they circle and they size up their situation before they come in. Now, had I known this, it would have been probably worse for me. I guess maybe I'm glad that I didn't know all this whole thing. But this thing would walk, and then he would size up the situation, and then he would come in. I'm just glad that he came in towards the bottom end of the thing. He walks in, and there's this cow laying there. And I mean, it's another one of these kind of a drag up, pick up. And I thought to myself, this is absolutely impossible, the size of a bear being able to do those kinds of things. And I was just absolutely fascinated by the whole thing. Well, I thought to myself, I'm going to take this bear. This is what I'm going to do. So I made a shot at that bear. And the bear just turned and looked at me. And I thought, no way. I had moved it down right in back of the front leg, right to the area where I normally would shoot, you know, or what I thought I was doing. But I shot, and the bear never moved, just kind of looked at me. And I thought, this is not good. And I thought, what in the world is going on? And I thought, do I shoot again? But I know I shot him. I know I hit him. You know, how in the world could this be? You know, and the whole thing. and he kind of wandered off because I was waiting for him to go off and then kind of drop, or whatever, but he didn't. I asked the guide afterwards, I said, tell me about that. He said, have you ever seen the size of a bear? He said, they're not that big inside. The head, big jaws, all that kind of stuff. But the body of the bear is not big at all. He said, but when they walk, that hair all hangs down. And so he said, normally when you would shoot, he said, you're aiming at an animal, but you got to aim higher than normal because the animal, in fact, in talking about it later with Bill Ritchie, who's the guide over in Ontario, he said that it's about the size of a dog, a large dog, that the bear would be. But he said it's absolutely unbelievable. And what happens is you shoot, but you're thinking you're shooting, but what you're shooting is you're shooting through hair. And that's how I missed that bear. And I thought, unbelievable. Well, I waited for this bear. So I go back every night waiting for this bear to come in because the guy said, he'll come back, no problem. He said, he'll come back and wait. And man, I waited for that bear. I ended up shooting another one, which was okay. It was a black bear kind of thing, but it was kind of brownish black, whatever, but it was good. But I never got that bear. And so I went back, and I remember the last night. If you go back to this guy's cabin that we stayed in, he had a big bear head with the claws coming out of the wall. And I took one of my shells, and I tied it on a string, and I tied it onto the bear's hand. And I just said, what's that for? And I said, I'm coming back one day. I'm going to use that shell to shoot that bear. I said, I want to leave it here so I remind myself of that whole bear and put it together. But I'm telling you, that was unbelievable. But that was the New Brunswick bears. And I hadn't really had that experience before to, try to hunt those kinds of things, etc., and put that together. I'd always wanted to do a couple of things. One was I always wanted to do polar bear. I always thought that would be a great thing to be able to do. And I remember going to a place called Watkins, I believe it was, out of Manitoba, and they did a fish mount for me there that time that I took that northern pike, which was the largest northern pike taken
from Canada.
Yeah, the year I won the Molstead beer contest, which was a boat motor and a trailer.
You should probably tell them briefly what you did win, but couldn't collect.
Oh, well, I got this northern, which was absolutely massive. I mean, it was total surprise for me. It was in the very early spring of the year. Got this massive fish, everything else, haul it out and take it into have them weigh it. They weigh the fish. The fish comes out of a garbage bag on the plane. It gets back to the place where the guy's going to weigh it. He slips on the floor. He goes, "What the whole hell's that?" I said, "It's a northern." They go, "Where'd you catch that?" And I said, "In that lake." He said, "No way." I said, "Well, I need to weigh it." And he goes, "Well, we can't weigh it. I don't have a scale big enough for this thing." He said, "You're going to take it down to the DNR office and have them weigh it." So I go into the DNR and they look at this thing and they go, "What in the world is this fish?" I said, "I caught it." And they go, "Are you kidding me?" Anyway, long story short, they took the scales off of it. They had to go through a bunch of process. And then they entered in this Molstead beer contest for northern pike, who's the largest northern pike taken in Ontario, Saskatchewan, all the different places, etc. But this thing was absolutely monstrous. I mean, it was a monstrous fish, and it was big. It was 49 and a half inches, I think this thing was. And I mean, it was a king thing. So they said, "Congratulations, you won the contest. So what we want you to do is we want you to keep the fish here. We're going to mount it, and then you can get it after a year. We're going to take it on tour around and do the whole thing and make that happen in a good way." And I said, "Okay, that's good." So this place called Watkins was the people who were actually taxidermying the fish. And I thought, okay, this would be great. They'll make the whole thing happen for me. So they keep the fish and they say, "Congratulations." Now they said, the contest is you win a boat, a motor, and a trailer. And I said, well, you're kidding me. A boat, motor, and a trailer? This is great. And I said the whole thing. They said, "But we got a problem." I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "You're a U.S. citizen. You're not Canadian." I said, "What difference does that make?" He said, "Well, it doesn't make a difference that you caught the largest fish, but it does make a difference in that you can't win the boat, motor, and the trailer."
The fine print.
I said, "What?" Because instead he said, "We'll give you a jacket." So you remember that orange jacket I had?
I do.
Orange jacket, and there was a fish probably 49 and a half inches embroidered onto the back, and it said Canadian...
His largest
Canadian
pike taken from
in
Canada
Canada.
this year. Yeah.
The whole thing. And I had the patch and the whole thing, and that's what I got was that crazy thing. I mean, can you imagine such a thing? And that's what I got was that. But anyway, but
Still
when
a cool
I went,
jacket, just not,
I know
not
it's
a
just
boat,
like I wanted the
trailer,
boat motor and the trailer, you know. I thought that was kind of a ripoff. Anyway, when the fish got done traveling, they said you can come pick it up at this place in Manitoba. So I go up to Manitoba and to pick Winnipeg and to pick this thing up, and I looked through the window, etc., at this place and everything else. And you know what they had hanging there? 5 polar bear skins. And I thought, oh, I'm feeling the burn. I need to do a polar bear hunt. And I said to the guy, I said, do you know anything about polar bears or someplace where I could talk to somebody? He said, well, first of all, you got to get Eskimos to do it because you really can't, you're not allowed to do that. And in the Hudson Bay area, which is where we used to do a lot of stuff, you really can't do that kind of thing up there. You got to get an Eskimo to kind of do the whole thing. I said, great, and then we'll do what we can do. But he said there's another problem. I said, what's the other problem? Is you can't bring them back in the United States. They're not allowed to be exported in the United States. I said, so what are these? He goes, these are guys that shot them in about 1940, 1950. He said, they're still hanging here because they can't get them into the U.S., and so they're kind of staying here. And I thought, you got to be kidding. So anyway, that's kind of the background on that story and what went on and everything else. It was kind of another thing. But I thought to myself, man, it's just, that was my thing, was can I do a polar bear, can I get that kind of thing, etc. And I haven't done that. I do fly tying a lot, and so I tie with polar bear. Polar bear hair is not white. It's clear. It's clear. And if you look at polar bear hair, it's unbelievable. When you look at it, you think it's white, but all that clearness goes along for it. And we used to tie with it because polar bear hair is hollow. And so when you tie with it for flies and fly casting and all that, it floats on the top in a tremendous way that you normally can't do that. So I had a guy out in Colorado when I was there who gave me patches of polar bear, and I would use it to tie flies and let people tie flies. I teach them how to tie flies, and I show them how to do it with polar bear hair because it would stand up in the air and everything. Well, anyway, that's another story.
They're crazy expensive to hunt, I know.
Oh, they are. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. But you know what? Bucket list.
That's right.
It could be there.
The story.
It could make it happen, because I love to say, what have I not done yet? What do I need to go after? And where is the most unique place that I could go in order to hunt these things and make it happen, etc. Well, it's kind of like that grizzly bear that you saw on the floor. I mean, I love the idea of how can you go to a place and hunt something that is just absolutely primo. I mean, it takes you back in the wilderness where you're kind of living life on the edge. The wild card again. It's like, how can I hunt something that in essence hunts me?
Right. The sport of it. You give it a sporting chance. Is that the idea? Yeah.
Now imagine this. There aren't many things that hunt humans, except maybe another human.
Right.
But can you imagine a bear that tracks you for days and hunts you and tries to find you and to eliminate you? It's just something about that which is terrifying, but on the other hand, is exciting.
I get it. I get it 100%.
It's kind of like the adrenaline rush. After a while, you got to go to the next level because you've already hit that level. You know what that feels like. Now, what can I go unusual, unique, and different that'll take me to the next level?
I don't think it's that odd. In my last video, I was talking about sort of there's only this sliver of human history where men haven't hunted for their livelihood, and we're thrust into this age that we're in, and we were kind of programmed for something very different. And there's something about hunting that brings this out of you that is ingrained in you.
Yeah.
You're sort of genetically predetermined to.
See, I think you're genetically predetermined too.
No,
do you remember when you were a kid?
Most people are.
Do you remember when you were a kid and I took you up to Canada to go hunting? I mean, we went up to the place where 5 rivers come together. I mean, this is way in the north, I mean, we're talking James Bay, Hudson Bay, and that whole area. How old were you?
Oh, I was young. 9?
9 years old, and I take you up there, and we get in this cabin. Do you remember we were sitting there one night getting ready to go to bed, and all of a sudden we hear this. And I said to you, hit the ground,
Hit the deck.
Here we are laying in the bottom of this cabin, and these guns are going off. We have no idea what's going on. You know, finally things get quieted down, and we get this flashlight. We come out, we walk down there. Here's this guy, Johnny, sitting there, and he's got this gun with a flashlight duct tape to it. And we go, "What's going on?" And he goes, "Bear." I said, "Bear?" He goes, "Bear everywhere." And I think that's the reason why when you always go to Canada, you'd always go, "I got to take my knife or my hatchet with me if I go outside."
No,
because
everywhere. I take my knife everywhere.
I never know, you know. But that was a first. I mean, you know, you were very impressionable at that time. But I mean, there was this crazy bear, and you know, and there were bears everywhere, and he was out there doing the whole thing, you know, and putting it together. And then we begin to hear more stories about bears and everything else, you know, because remember, you got to be careful around bears because you never know if one's going to catch fire. Remember that one?
So, yeah, so these bears, actually, let me hit this for a second. There we go. Making sure it's still recording there. So these bears, what they would do is they would get into the gas shed, right? And so gasoline, I guess, has
The man's telling the story. Keep going.
I'm taking over here. But jump in.
Yeah.
So gasoline has apparently a very sweet flavor to it.
It does.
And bears...
A certain piquant to it. Yeah, keep going.
So the guy who was running this place that we were staying, he was he was up on top of a building shooting these bears that night because they had gotten into the gasoline. And this is a normal thing.
Yeah.
They get into the gasoline.
Absolutely.
And they're sweet because they drink it. But then they get all hopped up on gasoline.
Hopped up.
And then you got to be worried.
You ever seen a bear hopped up on gasoline? Second only to shooting a bear that's hopped up on gasoline. Boom! And boom! That's explosion. Fireballs. Another bear hits the dust. Whatever. I mean, how did we know? We're dealing with danger of an animal that we think is just absolutely vicious. Do we know it's a time bomb? It's a ticking bomb. A hopped up bear filled with gasoline.
How great is it that you brought your 9-year-old son up there for that?
That's the way... He's had as an impact right here. You see, the boy knows. It's all good.
I thought it was great. I thought it was an adventure of a lifetime. Little did I know that everything after that would be just as good. But it was fun. It was a good time.
As Elizabeth Barrett Browning said, the best is yet to be.
That's right.
Oh, the best is yet to be.